There's all types of pressure and influence to get you to conform to the way culture and society wants you to be. The world wants you to be conformed to do the same things that everybody else is doing. When we're talking about being conformed, we're talking about being shaped and molded and squeezed to fit in with something. Let's talk about it. My name is Larry, and today I want to talk to you about don't conform, transform. Even from a young age, and as far back as I can remember, I never wanted to live my life from a copy and paste type of thing. I always wanted to write my own sentences. People used to say, man, you different. And I didn't know what to think about that. But now when they say that, I just smile and I say, thank you. You see, I never wanted to just copy and paste. I'm not a cookie, so don't bring your cookie cutter solutions to me. Okay, Romans 12 and 2 backs me up on this, since y'all looking at me crazy. Romans 12 and 2 says, don't copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. Then you will learn to know God's will for you, which is good and pleasing and perfect. What is he saying? He's saying don't let the world around you squeeze you into its own mold. Don't let the world around you tell you what you should be doing and how you should live. Paul is giving us a warning, and that warning is that the world systems and the popular culture and the way people think is mostly in rebellion against God. Most of these things in our culture goes against the ways and the nature of God. The world is trying to get you to conform into this ungodly pattern of living. But we as believers must be able to resist the temptation to just do what everybody else is doing. Because the world says it's okay to live with your boyfriend. You don't have to be married. You can just live together. We grown. See, that's copying the behaviors and the customs of this world. But the idea of not copying the customs and behaviors of this world really means don't be conformed to this world. Conform means to put on the form and the fashion and the appearance of another. It's anything pertaining to the habits of another, the dress and the style of another. And it's just the overall lifestyle of another. It's when you conform yourself to what you see around you. But I would just offer this up to you, that we as people of God are not here to just conform to what the world is doing. We are called to stand out and to stand on principles and values. You see, the world wants people to be selfish and promote themselves. But we are called to be selfless and promote others and put others first. The world says if you don't like somebody, you can, and if they make a mistake, you can just cancel them or you can just block them. But as God's people, we are called to pray for people and forgive them and to restore them and to love them as a person above all else. I'm just saying, we're not here to be a copycat and be conformed to this world. We're called to stand out. And how do you stand out? By letting God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. Yes, you can let God transform you. But before we talk about transformation, let's talk about our thinking. The way we think, the mind. Because the way you think determines who you are and what you will be. See, your mind is a battlefield, and there's always something fighting for territory in your mind. Always something there fighting for you to conform to something. Both good and bad. Both good and evil are always on the battlefield of your mind fighting. And the spirit and the flesh is always fighting on the battlefield of your mind. And they're fighting for the right to have territory. When I say your mind, I'm talking about your understanding. I'm talking about your will and your affections. I'm talking about your faculties. All of this is your mind. And what we're talking about today is changing the way you think, renewing your mind. And how do you do that? By letting God transform you and change your mind based off of his word and the principles and the values in the Bible. Then that's when God can transform you. Transformation. It's the renewal of the mind leads you to transformation in your life because you are what you think. But being transformed is the opposite of being conformed. See, being transformed is like a metamorphosis. When you're changed from one thing to another thing. And I know I'm talking to somebody right now who don't even like who they are. You don't even like who you become. Yeah, you got a bunch of followers and a bunch of people hanging on and a bunch of people gassing you up to continue to do things that you're doing. But the problem is you're tired. And you really don't like what you're doing. You're tired of trying to impress people and please people. But I just want to tell you that you don't have to keep that up. You can change your mind. You can change the way you think and let God renew you and transform you into the person He really created you to be. Because the whole purpose of this Bible verse is for you to be who God created you to be. Once you stop conforming to the world and doing what everybody else is doing and become transformed and change the way you think, then and only then will you learn to know God's will for you, which is good and pleasing and perfect. And believe it or not, God has a specific design for your life. And it's not to do what everybody else is doing. Why? Because He created you. He knitted you together in your mother's womb. You're fearfully and wonderfully made. That's why nobody else has your fingerprint. You were created to be unique, not to be conformed, to be like everybody else. So once you get that understanding, you can be transformed, and then you will know God's will for your life. You know, here's the thing. People are always saying, I just want to know God's will for my life. I just want to know my purpose. But the problem is, people say that, but they're not doing anything that God told you to do. You're not living your life according to the Word of God, to the Word of truth in the Bible. Let's read that verse one more time. It says, don't copy the behaviors and the customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. Then you will learn to know God's will for you, which is good and pleasing and perfect. See, when you do these things, you don't have to speculate. You don't have to waste time. You don't have to guess. You don't have to waste time experimenting with your life. You don't always have to be guessing. You can know the will of God for you. What if everyone would embrace this truth? Can you imagine? Can you imagine what it would be like if more people would embrace this truth? If more people would understand that God created them to not fit in with the world and do what everybody else is doing. It will be less pressure on you to measure up. It will be less pressure on you to look a certain way and to act a certain way. Because God's will is for you. God's will for you is and will always be better than what the world says you should do. I'm telling you, don't conform, transform.